Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And hello to your listeners.
All right, Dr. Ken. The results came out yesterday evening. So, what can we take from the results, considering? Last year it was a crazy time that we were living in, and we know that we're going to go down in the history books for surviving the pandemic.
Yeah, look, I suppose it's not that surprising. There would have been a drop. Again, when I suppose has to analyze in terms of the university pass, in terms of the children themselves, what they're going to do. I still, obviously, it's not a great percentage, and our standards are not always that high. But I'm not quite sure what the university percentage was. But as long as these children, today's kids are, I think it's not easy for them. I think COVID is difficult. But going into a world where they're unsure of what they want to do, what opportunities are there going to be for them, etc., I think those come into play now. One has to really generalize in terms of the results, because we've got such a cross-section of the population coming from all sorts of different socio-economic backgrounds. Some have got opportunities, others don't. So we want a country that is filled with employment opportunities everywhere. So it's not going to be easy for them.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And now also, because of the drop, the 5.1% drop from last year, this also means that there are more students feeling like failures and thinking about suicide and uh, having all of these negative thoughts. So, how can parents help prevent such things like suicide and, those feelings like a failure?
I think being realistic, suicide doesn't just happen because of one poor school result. There would have been a bit of a history there. You would have had a child quite depressed, unmotivated, maybe not that well socialized, very low self-esteem. There would have been all sorts of circumstances where parents should have picked up these danger signs quite long ago. Mm-hmm. And by the time a kid is 17 or 18, well, they can vote, they can drive a car. So it's pretty much like the cake is baked. The parents have done their job, the cake is baked. You can't unbake a cake. It's now up to the kids to really see what opportunities are there. But of course, they're still dependent on the parent to encourage them, to open doors for them, to allow them to study or whatever, and to deal with disappointments. Because today, from my experience, a lot of kids don't deal well with disappointments. They give up quite easy. A lot of them have got a feeling of entitlement. Do they have the grit, the determination to overcome obstacles? There's a whole lot of factors, because the universities are really pretty pressurized. They're overcrowded. They might not get in, a lot of children. Mm-hmm. What are their choices? Well, they can do it maybe by correspondence. There are other opportunities that could arise. The most important thing is for them not to give up, and for parents to understand the child's dilemma, or understand their child. Does the child have the drive to want to go and study further? Do they have it in them, or do they just want to lounge around for a year? They're just, everybody's different. So it's not something that we can just say, well, parents do this. I think parents are sitting with a product of how they've been parenting them. And and a lot of teenagers, I don't have to tell you, are not very happy. They lack joy. They don't keep themselves occupied. There are far too many that are totally absorbed with these games. Girls on social media. And this, if I can just give a stat, there's a book called The Coddling of the American Mind, and they found since 2005, there's been a 70% spike in suicide among girls and 25% with boys. And they're putting that mainly down to social media, because today kids don't really have to have friends, that they attach to. They just have this sort of subculture and create friends they never have to meet. And there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of unfortunate things happening on social media, and nobody's really monitoring that properly. But there's no question that a lot of children, their lives become that. And a lot of boys, their lives become gaming, where you find they're totally addicted to some of these games like Fortnite and Minecraft, where parents can't even get them off the machine. They've got attitude. They believe they're going to make $1 million being a gamer when they leave school. Those are very real problems that we are confronted with for the kids that obviously can afford these things, can afford to have social media. So, of course, we've got children that don't have high self-esteem, many of them, and aren't that well self-motivated, and their social skills are not great. With a lot of kids, they lack empathy, they've got attitude. I went to a dermatologist today. He tells me that the youngsters that are coming out of the first year of dermatology, they want to charge like 6,000 Rand for 15 minutes. So we've got a kid, there's just so many issues that young people have today. But unfortunately, the world isn't quite like that. But my big concern is the ability to socialize and to have the skills to go out and have relationships, to have make a meaningful contribution to themselves, to life, and so on.
Okay, so Dr. Ken, are you saying that we should now go back to the drawing board and then teach kids how to socialize instead?
I do think COVID has created a big problem from a social point of view. But if you have a look at the history, more and more kids have opted out of extramurals, playing games, playing sport, competing. That's a big problem. And they're sitting at home. A lot of parents think, well, maybe it's safe. But at some stage, what is going to happen to them when they do enter the bigger world and they do have to have certain social skills? They've got to understand what competitive really means. Competitive means losing as well. Or if you want to win, you've got to try harder. You've got to make the effort. You can't just sit back and think it's going to fall into your lap. So we do need to recognize these problems at a much younger age, a pre-teen actually. By the time they're teenagers, we're really sitting with quite a big problem with all of these distractions and all these kids feeling they're entitled to play all week on these games, where school is secondary, and that they don't have to compete in extramurals or become too involved with the school, etc. So I don't think we've made allowances in terms of the social side. How do we get kids involved socially while we've got this COVID problem where we've got to be distancing? We can't just have it as a cop-out for them to sit in their rooms and not socialize in some way or other in different activities. I think that is for me, it's one of the big problems that we're facing going down the line.
All right. So no one could have prepared for the pandemic or the lockdown, but now that we have some experience of it, we obviously can better prepare for the rest of the year ahead of us. So going forward, how do we prepare the current matriculants and as well as grade 11s for their exams?
As I said, I think they should be prepared. I think a child that is self-motivated will be able to discipline themselves. The problem is it's the bigger group of children that are actually engaged in their own little subculture of games and social media. You can't really reason with kids because that becomes part of their life. So we've got to somehow be able to connect with youngsters. A lot of parents aren't properly connected with their kids. There's just the threat the child cuts themselves off. So those are the danger signs. When a child is not communicating properly with their parent or making a demand that they've got to play these games. They've got to have cell phones and sleep with their cell phones and play all night and WhatsApp all night and this sort of thing. So parents have to understand that they've got to learn to communicate with their kids so that trust can be built up, so that the child can take responsibility for learning. Remember, learning is a choice. And why should a kid have to learn because a parent says so? They need to understand, they need to learn for themselves. Those are all things I believe we could focus on, helping parents connect more with their children so that the child knows, is more responsible, knows how to keep a boundary, that they can't sit on a phone all night type of thing. They've got to know what their priorities are, when to learn, how to learn, without somebody being on their back all the time. You've got to help them become more independent and responsible. But you can only do that with an adolescence if there is a trusting relationship between parent and child.
I think one excuse that parents always like to make is the fact that we are all from different generations, so we can't come to terms with each other. But that is just an excuse, because even if we are from different generations, there is a middle ground. We have to find a middle ground.
Exactly. And not only that, grit crosses all generations. Trying your best, learning how to handle disappointments crosses all generations. Having manners, understanding other people's feelings, interacting appropriately to the world out that is cross generation. Sure, there's different distractions, there's different, it's a different world. We're all connected. But having manners, having determination, having respect, having good self-esteem, etc., that crosses generations. Successful people have grit. It's not something that's lost because it's a new generation. It gets lost because we're not teaching kids how to stick with things, how to handle disappointments, how to pick themselves up when they're disappointed. We're not connecting with them properly. And as a result, in many homes, the child is in control. They're telling the parents they can turn on their TV whenever they like. They've got cell phones, they want smartphones connected to Wi-Fi, play whenever they like. So it's a whole value system that's a problem. And we're blaming it on generation gap, different generation. But there's no excuse for bad manners, attitude, violence, nastiness, lack of empathy. A generation gap should not destroy those sort of things. And that's where we're getting lost, because we don't know how to instill that properly in our children. We're not teaching them manners. We're not teaching them how to manage disappointment, how to try their best. We're just tending to give in and sort of pussyfoot around them because we're worried about their feelings without understanding, are they so worried about our feelings? So it's really something that I believe we've got to somehow try and educate parents how to do this. I think if you have a look, I haven't seen one parenting program that's come up as a possible solution or an assistance with the COVID gap. Parents that just have these kids at home. And how have they been able to manage it so that the child is doing their work? A lot of kids had a huge gap from the time they started COVID to when they went back to school. So how do we've got to help parents manage that so that during a COVID pandemic, there's got to be a structured home where kids have to be committed to learning, where it's a school day, not just an extended holiday at home, that needs to be managed by the parents. And I think we've got to start helping parents understand what their job is with their children at home, because parenting is a job, and they are managing their kids when the kids are not at school. They've got to have structure. They've got to have similar sort of structures and work with the school. They can't just have a child come there and, make half an effort, and the next minute we've got a big problem.
All right. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ken Resnick, educational psychologist and founder of the Smart Choice Parenting Program. I hope that this advice will go far and wide. Parents need to learn that. I mean, parents need to learn as well, because parenting is not easy. And if we don't know what we're doing, then we are not going to be able to parent our kids properly. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you. Same to you. Thanks very much.
Right. So, guys, parenting, not an easy thing. You might as well start now while they are still young, because it's not going to get any easier, especially when they become teenagers and they are entitled and they just want to be on their mobile phones the whole day, and they want to socialize and take pictures and post it on social media and talk to strangers online and have this instant gratification from the likes and shares that they get. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the world that we are living in at the moment, but we can improve in our parenting. And you never go on a holiday as a parent. You never take a break. Even if you go on holiday, you have to take your parenting with you on holiday. And it's not about shouting and beating the kids up. And, you give them punishment when they deserve it. When they need to be punished, they get punished. You must learn to separate the two as well. If you have any further comments regarding this topic, you can leave them in the comment section or send them to us on WhatsApp. The number is 0617660355. And we also want to hear from you, from any matrics, any matriculants of the class 2020 who passed. who would like to share their messages. Let us know what you're going to be doing going forward. If you're taking a gap year, if you are going to study something somewhere locally, internationally, and nationally, let us know. You can send us your messages to WhatsApp. The number is 061 766 0355. And stay with us. We will be right back.